An example of age discrimination in employment, let's say in a job interview, that I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, but I think this is something that actually happens, is discriminating against somebody because they're a Gen Xer. So maybe the employer has a policy in place, has been told don't hire any Gen Xers, and if they just directly ask you, did you grow up in the '90s? You went to high school in the '90s? Oh, okay. Anyways, and then if you could prove that that's why you didn't get the job, well, then you might have a case. It's not the sort of example people usually bring up. We usually think about it if you're too young or too old, and you're then deemed unemployable, or if you're employed and relegated to doing some task that somehow seems menial, or it's just robs you of your dignity as a human being and violates your human rights, which the Human Rights Code of Ontario is supposed to be about protecting. Then you should have a case. Usually we think about this if it's because you're too young or too old, but I assert that Gen X gets discriminated against on this. It's a type of ageism, but it would probably get laughed out of a courtroom, right? So, give an example of discrimination based on ethnic origin. Again, it's quite obvious. If somebody just directly asks you, "So are you Hindu? You're Hindu, or?" And then you don't get hired, then okay. And why can we not discriminate based on ethnic origin? Again, I mean, it's racism, it's bigotry, it's arguably just straight up evil. It alienates us as human beings, it's dehumanizing, it goes against our human rights. When an employer asks for your social insurance number, this is an interesting one, I didn't actually know this. If an employer asks for your insurance number, but we're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of citizenship, it turns out, according to the Ontario Human Rights Code. Let me just bring it up. Why not? So it turns out, I didn't know this, if the first digit of a person's social insurance number is 9, that means that they aren't a Canadian citizenship. They might have landed immigrant status or whatever. And you're not allowed to discriminate on that basis. Therefore, you shouldn't be asking that, even if that wasn't your intention. Instead, what you can ask is, are you eligible to work in Canada? You don't have to be a citizen to be eligible to work in Canada. You just have to have a SIN number. But you could ask, so do you have a SIN number? But you don't want to do that because then they might just start rattling it off. They might just start telling you what it is. So every person has a right to equal respect, employment without discrimination based on race, ancestry, place of origin, color, ethnic origin, citizenship. So that's that. Creed, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, age, record of offenses, marital status. Okay. What was the last one? I think. Is it a violation of the Ontario Human Rights Codes to not hire a person simply because they are a Trump supporter? No, it is not. Many people's gut reaction would be, yeah, that's got to be. That seems like robbing somebody of their dignity as a human being to say that, well, because you have these political views, I can discriminate against you. But as a matter of fact, well, it just ain't written in. It's not in there. So, yeah. If somebody supports Pierre Poilievre, if somebody supports Donald Trump, if somebody supports Jill Stein, seems weird because we're in Ontario. Why does it matter if somebody supports a politician south of the border? But anyways, okie dokie. Okie dokie to do that. In all of these, I can't help but think about, when does an employer, a potential employer, after a job interview, ever tell you exactly why they didn't want to hire you? The few times that I've gotten feedback, it's been, just not a good fit. You go through these employment counseling agencies, and they actually have an agreement in place where if we send somebody to be interviewed, you have to tell us why you didn't hire them. Or, give us feedback so we can help them work on their interview skills. And it's always been just not a good fit. And I can't help but wonder if certain things like body language and tone of voice and general attitude, which are manifestations of my ADHD, those things, those nonverbal cues come off as a bad vibe. This guy isn't a good fit. Am I reaching here? Am I reaching? There are these things called hidden disabilities, right? You can't tell just by looking, or you could if you knew what you were looking for. And people are discriminated against, I would argue, on the basis of those things all the time. And there's this other problem of like the intersection between things. You could potentially have a lawsuit or whatever. You could potentially claim that you were discriminated against on the basis of your political affiliation if your political affiliation intersects with religion. Right? If for whatever reason the political party that you vote for is also deeply connected to a religion or creed, well, then you can't be discriminated against. But I can think of so many examples where there are other intersections with those things, with the things that are supposedly protected. But look, ultimately, I know I'm carrying on. This isn't what was asked for, but I can't help but think about these things. And it's like, ultimately, you can discriminate against somebody for whatever reason you want. But this lovely document with all the best intentions in the world just forces people to be more covert about why they're discriminating against you. It forces them to be more low key. Not a good fit. Bad attitude. What if my so-called bad attitude is a result of previous discrimination on the basis of race, or because of my hidden disability, or because of this, that, and the other thing, right? When does an employer ever directly come out and say, well, they know not to directly come out and say it's on the basis of any of these things, and all that does is force them to be more covert in their discrimination. It makes it more deeply entrenched and ingrained and insidious. So the road to hell is paved with good intentions, isn't it?